Hello and welcome back to Great British Biking Adventures.
Looks like we've come to the world's end.
As it happened, this wasn't the world's end, but we had managed to get north of the Thames from our starting point this morning in Kent. Now we needed to head along the estuary to get back to some proper coast. Ride along with us as we discover the Essex coastline, the plucky parishioners of Mersea Island and the famous resorts of Southend and Clacton-on-Sea. If, like us, you've ever wanted to travel the entire UK coast, then you've come to the right place. The great thing about this series is it's like one of those open-top city tour buses. You can hop on at any point in the series and ride with us as we take you around our beautifully brilliant British coast. It's going to take a while, but eventually you'll end up back here. Don't forget to like, subscribe and leave a comment.
We're in Southend-on-Sea, city no less, the sign said. We're hoping to find some coast. We've done the Medway Tunnel, the Dartford Tunnel, got round the other side of the Thames, and here we are, back at the seaside.
On the 15th of October 2021, the Member of Parliament for Southend West, Sir David Amess, was fatally stabbed. He had long campaigned for Southend to become a city, and 3 days after his death, it was granted in his honour. He was a well-respected and much-loved MP. His murderer, Ali Harbi Ali, is serving a life sentence.
Chalkwell Esplanade. There you have it. Back to the water. Speed cameras everywhere. That looks like a very long pier. We've just decided that we need to stretch our legs. Been going quite a while, and we found a nice cafe. So we're just leaving Southend-on-Sea, travelling towards the pier, which we think is the longest one in the UK, at a mile long. So we've been told.
It's the usual story of a small village becoming a seaside resort in the Victorian era, then declining as a holiday destination in the 1970s. Southend adapted better than others. It became the home of the Access credit card, as it had one of the UK's first electronic telephone exchanges. HM Revenue and Customs, the people who collect our taxes, are major employers in the city. That said, about 6.4 million tourists still visit Southend per year, generating an estimated revenue of £200 million.
You can just about make out the little train that's going along Southend-on-Sea pier.
Southend has 7 miles of beaches and, at 1.34 miles, the world's longest pleasure pier.
Yeah, no closer. Little less manic, please. So this is the approach to Mersea Island. Got to go across this little causeway that is submerged in high tide. The tide is definitely not high.
Mersea Island is easily accessed via a causeway known as the Strood, which is believed to have been constructed by the Saxons in the 1st century. The road can be covered for up to an hour at high tide, especially during spring tides.
Smell that salty air.
Oysters have been harvested here since Roman times and are shipped worldwide. The history and association with the oyster trade attracts a significant number of tourists each year, though today the trade is predominantly with Pacific oysters, which have been introduced to the area. In 2006, more than 1,000 locals signed a petition against the proposed opening of a Tesco's Express store on the island, raising concern that it would take trade away from local business. Unfortunately, the plans went ahead anyway. The islanders, if you can call them that, appear to be a plucky bunch. On June 4th, 2012, as part of the Queen's Diamond Jubilee celebrations, they declared independence from the UK for that day. Anyone travelling to the island across the Strood paid 50p for a passport.
There's some more World War I rustic cutouts along this coastline. It's obviously got some history here. Oh, it's lovely. Very close to head. Again, we're having a lot of those.
As we rode around, we noticed the silhouettes of World War I soldiers. In 2018, to commemorate the centenary of the end of the First World War, 51 of these metal soldiers and sailors were erected on the foreshore. It was a memorial that captured the imagination of many people. The soldiers and sailors appear to be marching across the marsh towards the mainland and represent the men who lost their lives in the conflict. They are the men who either lived on the island or had a strong connection with Mersea. The soldiers were at the Strood for a year, but the majority were taken down in November 2019. I wondered why they couldn't just be kept in place as a poignant reminder of the sacrifice these brave men made for us. Instead, they were auctioned, and thankfully most have found homes on the island and can be easily found. In 2020, 2 new memorial soldiers were erected. Eventually, more will be added in between to create a timeline from the First World War to the Korean War. These were yet another example of the Mersea Island mentality, and we like it.
West Mersea Yacht Club. So we're going back across the Strood from the island of Mersea. Been down to West Mersea and had some shellfish, some mussels, local from the area. Very, very nice. So later on tonight, about 10 o'clock I believe, this will be covered in water. The tide will be in. And the causeway will have water on it. Looks like they're getting fields ready for sowing spring seed, vegetables. Southend-on-Sea, and we are heading along the seafront. It looks surprisingly a lot like a lot of the other seafronts we've been going along lately on this part of the UK coastline. Lots of more windmills out there, loads of them.
Mods and rockers were two conflicting British youth subcultures of the 50s and 60s. Media coverage of the mods and rockers fighting in 1964 sparked a moral panic about British youth, and the two groups became widely perceived as unruly troublemakers. On the Easter weekend of 1964, Clacton was one of the first places violent clashes kicked off. The incident became known locally as the Battle of Pier Gap. A second round took place across the south coast of England over the Whitsun weekend that year, especially at Brighton, where fights occurred over 2 days and moved along the coast to Hastings and back, and dubbed the Second Battle of Hastings. Both groups had a passion for motorcycling, albeit two distinctively different styles. The term cafe racer comes from the rockers adapting their machines in the pursuit of performance. The mods saw themselves as progressives and opted for the more modern scooter design, but were no less into customisation, adoring their machines with multiple mirrors and badges. There was a similar polarisation in the clothes they wore and the music they listened to. In hindsight, it all seems to have been a bit of a storm in a teacup. There were occasional incidents thereafter, but these rarely got any attention at all. The cult movie and rock opera Quadrophenia depicts this era to the soundtrack of The Who.
Lots of lovely spring bulbs there. Gardens are beautiful. And the War Memorial. The lovely little bridge going over the road. Very nice. Very busy. With people enjoying their Easter holidays, I assume. Upside down house. Not quite sure what that's all about. Got a little bit of a hold up because the level crossing is down, which means there's a train coming.
As we wait for the train, I think we'll end this episode. Join us back here next time as we hopefully get going again and press on into Suffolk, where we will eventually end this long day of riding, discovering the old port of Harwich and the small but significant town of Aldborough, and struggle to find anywhere to camp.